YouTube, NBA free agency is officially upon us, and in day one of free agency, we saw some massive moves like Paul George to the Philadelphia 76ers, Chris Paul to the San Antonio Spurs, and KCP to the Magic, right? Day two was just as crazy in my opinion, where you saw a lot of big name guys go to other teams, and honestly more transactions in general. We saw some history defining contract extensions, NBA landscape shifting moments in day two of NBA free agency in 2024. Let's talk about every move that was made in this video. And we gotta start with the four-time champion, Mr. Four Rings, maybe the second greatest shooter of all time, and that is Klay Thompson himself of the Golden State Warriors being traded in a sign and trade deal to the Dallas Mavericks, breaking up the Warriors core big three of Steph, Klay, and Dre. And now Klay Thompson is headed to Dallas, where he will have, in my opinion, a better chance to compete for a title in 2025. The details of this trade are basically free agent Klay Thompson plans to join the Dallas Mavericks on a 3-year, $50 million deal with a player option, sources tell ESPN. Thompson ends his heroic Warriors run as a part of a multi-team sign and trade that'll also send Josh Green to Charlotte. So the Mavs basically add Klay Thompson, send a second-round pick to the Warriors, and give up Josh Green to the Charlotte Hornets. Now, in my opinion, Klay Thompson is arguably the second best player on this free agency market, but this is a landscape-shifting move for the Western Conference and the Dallas Mavericks. I mean, they just got so much better. Picture this starting five, folks. Luca Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, PJ Washington, and Derek Lively II. Imagine the sheer volume of shooting from Luca, Kyrie, and Klay. I mean, that's all-time great three-man shooting rotation, in the starting lineup for the Mavericks, and just a crazy trade that, I thought Klay Thompson was either going to stay with the Warriors going into free agency or go to the, Lakers. We heard a lot of rumors about. He ends up going to the finals runner-up in Dallas and, basically just shocks the whole Western Conference. So this is a crazy trade that I think the Mavericks get a ton better from. Warriors move on from Klay. Didn't seem like it was working out there. And listen, while Klay's not exactly a all-NBA caliber player anymore or a two-way monster, right? Klay is still one of the best shooters in the league, no question about it. I mean, you are getting a offensive weapon that, you just can't find that many of in the league. A+ move for the Mavericks, I gotta say. And honestly, 3-year deal is pretty, friendly on $50 million for Klay Thompson's value. I love the deal for the Mavericks. We had to get that one out of the way, man. Now let's talk about some giant contract extensions, and starting with the biggest one in NBA history, and that is Jayson Tatum of the Boston Celtics signing a 5-year, $314 million extension with Boston, giving him the biggest contract ever signed in NBA history, who, basically follows his teammate from last year, Jaylen Brown, in breaking that record, right? Only slightly, but he did surpass Jaylen Brown in that regard, Well deserved for Tatum. Obviously, he is one of the faces of the league. People are going to criticize his finals performance, but listen, man, he's got a ring, and now he's got the biggest contract ever. I think Jayson Tatum is doing just fine. One of the big questions going into free agency would be Donovan Mitchell, right? Like, does he want to stay in Cleveland long term? Are they looking to extend him? And breaking news as of yesterday, Donovan Mitchell will sign a 3-year, $150 million extension to stay in Cleveland with a player option in 2027, 2028. More great news if you're a, Cavaliers fan, and Cavaliers have had a good offseason so far, hiring Kenny Atkinson. This is obviously the priority in this free agency, is just extending your best player, right? And now you lock him down for 3 years plus a player option. I think you got to be thrilled if you're Cleveland. More Sixers news, right? So, we saw some guys leaving free agency, which we'll get to for the Sixers, but Tyrese Maxey, our breakout superstar guard, I'm a Sixers fan. I don't know if you guys could tell. If you guys are following this channel, you guys are probably sick of hearing me talk about the Sixers. That's all I do. But Tyrese Maxey, my favorite player in the world, signs a 5-year, $204 million maximum contract extension with the 76ers. Well deserved. I made a tweet saying, I wish we'd give him $300 million. I wish we'd give him more money, because Tyrese Maxey deserves every penny and then some, right? What he's done for my, Sixers, and really just giving us a chance to contend every season alongside Joel Embiid, is nothing short of amazing, and just a great person as well. You'll love to see Tyrese Maxey finally getting his due with the Sixers. I am thrilled about, many more years to come for Tyrese and the Sixers, so you love to see it. Those are the big extensions. Now let's get into some moves that might seem kind of, I don't want to say insignificant, but in comparison to Klay Thompson, Jayson Tatum, and, Donovan Mitchell, they might seem a little bit less valuable, but, for these individual teams, I think these are giant moves, right? And starting with another Sixers player, Tobias Harris, who will not be returning to the Sixers. I know a lot of Sixers fans are happy to hear that. I'm not saying I'm one of them, but I am one of them. And listen, Tobias Harris is still a really good player in this league. He signed a bad contract with the Sixers and didn't perform up to it. That's the Sixers' fault really for signing him to that contract, in my opinion, but it didn't go the best the last few years with the Sixers. And, Tobias Harris, returns to Detroit, where he's played a couple seasons before, on a 2-year, $52 million deal. Pistons reportedly had interest in consistent Tobias, all the way leading up to this point in free agency. So he secures a nice contract on a rebuilding team, and obviously still can provide some solid play from that power forward position, but also maybe can provide some veteran leadership and mentorship for guys like Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, Jaden Ivey, all those guys, right? So, and newly acquired draft pick Ron Holland, right? So I think this is a decent move for the Pistons. It doesn't really fit their timeline a whole lot, but I think the Pistons were one of those teams that had to spend cap room in free agency. So, they get a guy that they're familiar with in their organization who can help in those regards. This is probably, the second biggest move other than the extensions, just in terms of free agency, right? As far as day two goes, behind Klay Thompson, and that is the Oklahoma City Thunder reportedly adding to its front line, agreeing to a 3-year, $87 million deal with Isaiah Hartenstein. Isaiah Hartenstein, the Knicks backup 5-man, they wanted to retain him, but with the Maxiell Bridges trade and the OG Anunoby re-sign, already having Mitchell Robinson locked down as that 5-man, it's gonna be tough to retain a guy worth that much. So the Knicks lose a big time asset and the Thunder gain one. I mean, this is a great move for Oklahoma City. I mean, we talked about how the Thunder had a lot of cap room along with these other teams. Maybe they didn't get talked about enough because this might seem like a little bit of an overpay for a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein, who played backup 5 for the Knicks, right? But listen, man, Isaiah Hartenstein is excellent in his role. I think adding a little bit of, size and interior presence to that Oklahoma City front court is massive for them, right? That is one of their biggest weaknesses, rebounding, right? And Isaiah Hartenstein is an excellent offensive rebounder. He's an excellent rebounder in general. He's a smart player. He's a good competitor. He's got a little bit of offense to him as well, If you guys watched, the Sixers and Knicks first round matchup, you would know that Isaiah Hartenstein is a really great, starting caliber center, honestly, in this league. And I think, he will stagger minutes with guys like Chet Holmgren, but, Jalen Williams as well. But we'll have to see how that, the minutes situation works. But I love this move for OKC. Again, it might seem like an overpay on paper, but I think for them specifically, this is worth every penny as you basically address your biggest weakness in 2024. And you also add Alex Caruso. So the Thunder have gotten a lot better in free agency. We'll talk about them a little bit more in a bit, but massive move for OKC. Report, Mo Bamba leaving Sixers for Clippers. Center Mo Bamba has agreed to a 1-year contract with LA after spending last season backing up Joel Embiid and Paul Reed in Philadelphia. This is a good move for the Clippers. I think they've lacked some, quality backup 5. They had Mason Plumlee last season, but he was injured a lot of the time. And you bring in Daniel Tice last year, who, gave you, I guess, a little bit of a band-aid there. But the backup 5 has been a problem, I'd say, for the Clippers. Zubac was really great last season as the starting 5, and him and James Harden have a great chemistry together. But securing Mo Bamba, who could maybe compete for that backup 5 job, I think is really good because he's the type of center I think the Clippers need, right? A defensive interior presence. And listen, Mo Bamba has his issues, right? I watched him closely with the Sixers last season. He was okay for us, but at this point in his career, he is really a great catch and shoot guy from 3 as a big man. He's an athletic guy, right? He can really get up there on the glass. And again, he can block weak side shots. He's a decent rim protector with, again, good athleticism. I think for the Clippers, it makes sense. I will say the issues that Mo Bamba has, in my opinion, are his feel for the game and his instincts, right? Maybe being a little bit out of place a lot of times and, just kind of lacking some toughness on the interior. And that's kind of Mo Bamba's weakness, but he does have a lot of positives, man. He's still a young player with a lot of, catch and shoot ability from 3. He can really space the floor as a 5-man. So I like the move for the Clippers. I really do. Another Harris, making some news at free agency, and then his veteran shooter Gary Harris will stay with the Magic for a total of $14 million over 2 seasons. I like the move for Orlando. I don't be saying I like the move a lot, but I do like this move because Gary Harris, real just natural shooter, right? This guy is a pure shooter. Again, another veteran guy you bring back to Orlando. He was, pretty good as that, spot up shooter in Orlando last season. And in my opinion, we've talked about the Magic's biggest weakness being their shooting, right? And they're being able to space the floor with multiple perimeter threats while guys like Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner can get to work and, inside, you know what I mean? Like getting to the rim, finishing, and you got to create space for those guys to work and operate. And I think retaining Gary Harris for a 2-year deal also provides some, veteran toughness and edge. And then you bring in an elite shooter in KCP. I think this is a great move for Orlando, bringing back Gary Harris. Clippers have been so active in free agency. This is another one. Point guard Chris Dunn is leaving the Jazz, whom he revitalized his career over the past 2 seasons, and joins the Clippers on undisclosed terms. This is a W for the Clippers. Chris Dunn is one of the more underrated point guard free agents, in my opinion. Only played about 22 games, I think it was, with Utah last season, but really showed a lot of flashes of improvement as a player. This is a guy who was drafted pretty high in his draft class a long ways back and has struggled to find a home and a solid, consistent role in this league, and finds maybe his new home with the Clippers, right? this is a defensive-minded point guard who can provide a lot of solid playmaking chops, right? So I think when you sub out James Harden and Terrence Mann, you bring a guy like Chris Dunn on the floor, you're getting similar value to Terrence Mann in a defensive regard, right? Playmaking as well, he provides a lot of playmaking. So he also improved as a scorer last year. So I think this is a good move for the Clippers, who again have been very active in adding a lot of, I guess under the radar talent. You think about Kevin Porter Jr., think about Mo Bamba, they signed Derrick Jones Jr., obviously they lose Paul George, but adding a lot of depth, I think, is what the Clippers needed. And this is, no exception here. Goga Bitadze, who started a career high 38 games last season, will remain in Orlando with a 3-year, $25 million contract. I think this was kind of an interesting move for me, as they declined his team option, I believe. So maybe it was just to secure his long-term extension, or maybe they had hopes in bringing in Paul George. So they kind of, remained flexible by declining his player option. Once Paul George signs with the Sixers, you sign KCP, you only have a little bit of, wiggle room left as far as cap. And then you say, okay, Goga, remember that team option we declined? We made a mistake. Come back for 3 years. We'll reward you. So again, kind of an interesting move here. This is a backup 5 for the Magic, who I think played pretty well in that role. You have Wendell Carter Jr., you have Bitadze now to cause a lot of havoc on the interior, and the Magic shoring up their front court with this move, keeping a lot of size in the building. Bitadze is a big man, both positionally and literally. He's a giant human. So the Magic have built a brand of physicality and toughness on the interior, and I think this is going a long way to keep that going, right? Report: Garrett Temple to stay in Toronto. A veteran of 13 NBA seasons, Garrett Temple will continue his career for at least one more year after agreeing to a 1-year deal. Not much to say about this one. I mean, just kind of a 1-year deal for Garrett Temple, who has been an NBA journeyman throughout his career as a backup point guard, has provided solid minutes in a lot of teams, and Toronto is one of them. And I think this is just kind of a veteran re-sign where add some leadership and mentorship, bring back Temple, maybe has a good relationship with the organization, and also can teach guys like, newly extended Emmanuel Quickley to, basically become a playmaking point guard. So I think this is a good move for mentorship and leadership as a veteran. This one hurt me as a Sixers fan, and that is Clippers will sign Nicolas Batum to a 2-year, $9.6 million deal. Man, I love Nick Batum with the Sixers. He was so great. And the Sixers now are in a really bad spot at the power forward position while losing Batum. You know what I mean? Batum is so capable on both ends of the floor, providing a lot of different things for a team that are positive towards winning. Number one, quick trigger shooting. I mean, this guy can get off a catch and shoot maybe faster than anyone in the league. It's insane, and he shoots it at a high rate of efficiency. Number two, his passing, right? He is a great entry passer to the post. He is a great basketball IQ guy who reads the game just as well as anybody in the league as a role player, right? Batum is a great passer for a forward. Number three, defensive versatility and reliability, right? Batum I saw last year traveling with guards 94 feet, right? This is a guy who can play off-ball denial on a guard, and sometimes the best guard on the other team off-ball, right? He can guard power forwards, he can guard small forwards, he can step in and, like I said, deny those guards off the ball. He's a really great competitor, and he is as consistent as they come as far as NBA veterans. I mean, this guy is honestly worth so much more than $10 million, but that's why I'm so hurt about the move. When they reported Batum wouldn't re-sign with the 76ers, and I think this one's going to hurt us big time, because think about the fit next to Joel Embiid. He was as good as it gets. Now the Sixers are going to struggle to find a power forward, and we'll talk about the Clippers because he signed there, but I'm just really hurt over this one. But I love Batum, man. You're getting a guy who is consistent, catch and shoot from the corner, from the top of the key, from the wing. He could shoot it anywhere, right? Decent rebounder. When he needs to, he can go up and get one. Great just utility gadget guy, right? You plug him into almost any lineup and he's just going to fit in seamlessly at the 4 or the 3. This is an absolute W for the Clippers, and they have gotten so much better, as I mentioned, in this offseason. It's not even funny. You lose Paul George, but you bring in so much depth, and Batum may be the best of the bunch for the Clippers on a really good team-friendly deal, 2-year, $9.6 million. He was involved in the James Harden trade, so there's going to be some interesting conversations there in that locker room, I'd imagine. The Bucks reportedly sign veteran guard DeLon Wright to a 1-year deal. I actually like DeLon Wright a ton. I think he's a great perimeter defender, and honestly, last year with Miami, he showed the ability to shoot a little bit better. So Doc Rivers apparently, is pretty committed to shoring up the perimeter defense, bringing in guys like Pat Beverly, bringing in guys like DeLon Wright. Not sure what his, minute usage is going to look like in Milwaukee, as, like I said, Patrick Beverly, they're kind of similar players, right? But, DeLon Wright's still a really good perimeter defender, and if he can, shoot a consistent 3-ball, he can stay on the floor pretty easily, I'd say. The Chicago Bulls reach a 3-year, $27 million deal with rising center Jaylen Smith. And Jaylen Smith had kind of an inconsistent role with the Indiana Pacers, but he does have a ton of talent, right? He can space the floor as a 4. He can even play the 5 at times if you want to have a backup 5, right? He's an athletic guy, right? Gets up and down the floor pretty well, but again, his shooting ability and defensive rim protection is really what stands out to me about Jaylen Smith. I like the move for Chicago because, get a little bit more athletic on the inside as you lose Andre Drummond, and this is a guy with a lot of upside. I think this could end up paying off big time for the Bulls on a 3-year, $27 million deal if he can put all the pieces together mentally and physically. Like I said, this guy has a ton of upside for Chicago. Another 76ers player on the move, and that is DeAnthony Melton. The Golden State Warriors poach him away from us, one of our best players throughout his time here. Golden State has agreed to a 1-year, $12.8 million deal with veteran guard DeAnthony Melton. And if you're a Warriors fan and you're curious about Melton, just listen to this, right? Consistency, right? Another guy that's just constantly, you know what you're going to get out of Melton. He's a great perimeter shooter, catch and shoot, right? He can even take it off the dribble at times. You don't really want him doing that a whole lot, but this is a guy that can, play make a little bit. He can pass a little bit. He can shoot a whole lot, right? And defensively, he's one of the best smaller guard defenders in the entire league, right? This is a guy that can really make plays on that end of the floor. I mean, if you're talking about steals, if you're talking about passing lanes, if you're talking about one-on-one individual defense with a smaller guard, even able to take on a 2 guard that is a little bit bigger than him, I think DeAnthony Melton is an underrated player in this league, and I think he's going to have a great year with the Golden State Warriors. Now, in my Sixers, he did have a big back injury last season that kept him out for most of the season. And I think that's why he's not getting a, $60 million 4-year contract type situation here. This is kind of a 1-year prove-it deal for me personally, but I think if you're a Golden State Warriors fan, you are going to get a ton of value out of this player next season as long as Melton can stay healthy. Houston guard Aaron Holiday plans to sign a 2-year, $10 million deal to stay with the Rockets. Kind of an interesting move here. The Rockets have a ton of depth and versatility on that wing, and I think Aaron Holiday is no exception, right? I like the move for them. This is where OKC comes back into the mix, right? They retain 2 key players in their rotation, and one of them being Aaron Wiggins, right? Aaron Wiggins is so underrated as a player, in my opinion. A great efficient shooter, top tier efficient 3-point shooter last season. Competes defensively. I'm not sure he's the best defender, but I think he is pretty good. Just provides a lot of, great versatility for them, and is a young guy as well. OKC and Aaron Wiggins have agreed to a 5-year, $47 million extension, and I think you gotta love that value if you're OKC. Another guy that is an absolute sniper from 3 and one of the best rising shooters in the league. I think this guy is about as good as it gets as a off-ball shooter, and that is Isaiah Joe. And he really opened up a lot of things for OKC last season with that elite shooting ability, really being a big part of why they were so good last season. And they're able to lock him down on a multi-year extension. Isaiah Joe apparently getting a 4-year, $48 million deal to stay with Oklahoma City. This is great value for them. Basically retaining 2 young, key role players on this team, right? I love these 2 moves. I think, they're going to be really underrated for OKC. Just locking down talent that you already have is very underrated these days, and this is no exception. A couple more, smaller time centers re-signing deals. In the case of Luca Garza, he will remain in Minnesota on a 2-year deal. Just kind of a 3rd string center type of thing for Luca Garza. Not a returning extension, but this is another kind of underrated player. The Utah Jazz reportedly agreed to a 2-year deal worth $10 million with Drew Eubanks. Drew Eubanks, backup 5 for the Suns last season, provided some quality minutes. Overall, I think it's an okay move for the Utah Jazz. So overall, I think this was a maybe even bigger day than day 1. On day 2 of free agency, we saw tons of moves, maybe more moves than we saw on day 1. Maybe not quite the magnitude of a Paul George, KCP, these big hard-hitting contracts, right? But we saw some groundbreaking contract extensions, right? And Klay Thompson, obviously one of the biggest names on the market, going to Dallas, right? So clearly, tons of stuff going on in day 2, probably the biggest day we'll see of free agency. There's still a lot of great free agent pieces still available on the market. And I think in tomorrow's video, if they're not signed, I'm going to make a video talking about the best free agents still available. The biggest one, DeMar DeRozan. I think he's for sure going to leave Chicago. There's been reports about him wanting to take a mid-level exception on a 1-year deal in hopes that next season's free agency, he can, sign somewhere for a big deal with teams with more cap space. We'll have to see how that ends up, man, because DeMar DeRozan's still a quality bucket getter, all-star level talent. Just a crazy day, man. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel if you guys don't want to miss everyday uploads on this channel. We'll be making plenty of videos just like this moving forward every day, right? All things NBA every day. I don't want you guys to miss it, man. I'm a passionate basketball fan. I want to do this every day to share, my passion with you guys for the NBA. We're going to be talking trades. We're going to be talking free agency, draft, summer Olympics, the season, the summer league's coming up. We'll maybe do a little bit of analysis there, but just know that, I can guarantee you NBA content every day on the channel. That's what you're getting if you subscribe, and stay tuned. We're gonna be doing tons of free agency stuff. Maybe day 3 will be crazy. Follow my Twitter. I'm pretty active over there. I try to be, at least. Make sure you guys have a great rest of your day today, and thank you guys for watching all the way to the end. It means so much to me. I will catch you guys in the next one. This is your boy D-Haven. As always, peace.